That's actually what motivated Gary and I to start the podcast. Is like, well, maybe we can get a fan base for the podcast, and then translate that into the game. Who knows if that'll actually work? The podcast isn't going so
I
well so far, but
I think we just need to bring a crazier Gary.
yeah, Gary, I think you need to be the personality here. You're the one that usually has all the witty comments and inappropriate things to say. I censor myself too much.
Well, I'm trying to get canceled here, Blair. So I gotta,
Yeah,
I gotta be hit
you
somewhat.
should get canceled. We got to be controversial, I think.
I think, you know,
You can say something offensive.
Yeah.
So, you want to be a diver, huh? I don't blame you. It's quite a view from up here. But mercs like us, we live for the drop. You checked your parachute, right? Machines thought they were rid of us, but we need them for spare parts. It's up to us to get down there, grab what we can, and get back home before the meaner bastards show up. Andrea, for the last time, my hairspray is not a flamethrower.
I know I wanted to. That was where I wanted to go. I can't say that it was necessarily supported broadly, and I ultimately ended up not really doing it until well, arguably not even now. But it's just like it's something we've talked about a few times on the podcast. Is if the education was there, maybe if the support was there, would have I gone down a different path from day one? Who knows?
It's, you know, it's possible, but I still talk to more people who for their story starts off like mine, where they're like, I got to games kind of weird, like my path was a little like circuitous or something like that. I talk to more of those people than people who are like, I graduated from a game design program and now I am in games. I think that's probably a large function of just how new game design programs are. And that's going to change over time as we see more and more of these graduates entering the workforce. But I still, I think that it's perfectly fine. And in fact, healthy to come to games from someplace else, because then you bring a new perspective.
So if you could go back and change something about Vidar, like what would have you done? What do you think you could have done to make this? Well, let's be honest. Let's say make it more successful.
Oh, I probably still don't have the answers to that. I feel like I know more than I did, but I don't know that I could have made it any more successful. I would have, obviously, like now I'm much more comfortable with my tools, so I would have loved to have made it in Unity. I would have loved to, you know.
I'll give you the Karendow engine for the remake.
Yes, excellent. Thank you.
Some things in that code base are getting kind of messy, though. But hey,
it happens for any sufficiently large game. I would have liked to just put more effort and energy into the actual marketing of it. Or honestly, particularly as compared to Wastenauts, Vidar would have been much better publisher bait to actually get somebody to fund it, publish it, market it for me.
Did you try?
I didn't at all. I didn't know that publishers were a thing. Like I had no concept as to that until so after the game was out, I was accepted to Indie Mega Booth for Vidar, and I was setting it up at PAX West, and Z from Serenity Forge came over to me and was like, "Wait, are you involved in Vidar?" And I was like, "When you say involved, like I yes." And that
Vidar is
I
me.
did all of it except for the art and music. And he was like, "Oh man, like I judged this game for some other like thing I had submitted for," and he's like, "I love it. It's like such a great concept and all that kind of stuff." And I'm like, how much did my husband pay you to say that? Who are you? And he's like, yeah, you know, like how sales been going and that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, it didn't do anything, but I'm just excited to be here because Indie Mega Booth was always like a dream of mine, and showing at PAX was always a dream of mine. And he was like, oh, really? Like, I kind of had figured that you already had like all of your like publishing and stuff sorted. And I was like, no, I didn't have any of that.
Publisher?
What is this? What is going on? And so that was kind of like my first entry into it, but it was obviously too late for Vidar there. I think it would have been a really good thing to be able to, now that I'm sitting on the side of the publisher, and now that I, you know, spend probably like, you know, 4 or 5 hours a week of my time reviewing other games as to whether they would be a good fit for publishing.
So you get to be the jerk that rejects games now.
Yes, I do. I reject so much. No, I actually really love it because I love giving feedback, but we could talk about that in a second. But I do feel like Vidar would have been a better fit than Wastenauts, certainly. And yeah, that's probably the direction it would have gone.
Yeah, so actually on that note, let's talk about early access, because you and I have actually talked about this before on Discord and other venues, etc. But what's your take on this? Because I had suggested to you that Gary and I are actually going to put Karendow on Steam Early Access. And you seem kind of, well, I think hesitant, or maybe, are you sure this is the right thing? I'd like to hear what you have to say.
I think early access is a good tool, but you need to know what you are trying to achieve with it. And if it's just sales, if it's literally just we want to get sales, then it is I think a bad deal, because it
would be about building a community, getting a fan base, and getting the word out, and getting more people on Discord, and starting a conversation, and hopefully building on that from there.
Right. So that's an interesting like goal in general, right? In terms of like building a community and stuff like that. Here's the issue: it's a single player RPG. So my feeling is, person buys it on early access. They join the Discord. Okay, you've got numbers on your Discord, but it's not numbers that are going to then convert at launch. They've already bought the game. And so if this were a multiplayer game where people are going to bring in their friends, if this were a live ops game where it's going to constantly evolve or something like that, if this were a game where community mattered more, then I'd be like, community is a good goal. But my feeling on kind of like a single player RPG or narrative experience or stuff like that is, it's an experience, and it's probably a one-time one. And so the likelihood that I have never played an RPG in early access that I'm like, I'm going to play this again when it comes out. I'm like, no, I got a picture.
Well, I don't think there's a lot of high-quality indie RPGs, not even early access, just period. A lot of them are kind of shovelware.
I feel like there's some good ones out there, but
there are good. There are some, but there's not a lot.
But I guess, Dean, are you speaking like regardless of the quality of the game? Like even if it was good, it would be kind of like a one-time experience. Oh, you know what? I played this RPG. It was cool, but I don't really care to play the rest of it when it comes out, because
maybe if there was like a branching narrative, maybe if there's like if there's replay,
we are not doing a branching narrative.
but like so start to think about like, what does that, are all you're doing is shifting your sales earlier and in a way where Steam isn't going to support you as much, where people are going to see like the early access tag and be like, I'm going to wait. It strikes me that you could like use that time to actually just make the game good out the gate, and
find a publisher,
or find a publisher.
Because building an audience, is really hard anyway. That's actually what motivated Gary and I to start the podcast. Is like, well, maybe we can get a fan base for the podcast, and then translate that into the game. Who knows if that'll actually work? The podcast isn't going so well so far, but
I think we just need to bring a crazier Gary.
Yeah, Gary, I think you need to be the personality here. You're the one that usually has all the witty comments and inappropriate things to say. I censor myself too much.
Well, I'm trying to get canceled here, Blair. So I gotta be
hit you somewhere. Should get canceled. We got to be controversial, I think.
I think, you know,
you can say something offensive.
Let's get fired.
I am blessed to now work with at a company that has a separate marketing team, so I don't have to think about this crap, because this is not my strong suit at all.
So, do you want to publish Kids of Karendow? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Do I? Sure. But there's a lot more. I think in general, there's more work that has to go into this than every single indie gives it credit. And I think the more that I see what our marketing team does, like at Akupara, the more I realize how bespoke it is, how really tailored like your marketing concepts have to be.
That's hard.
Yeah, it really, really is. And it requires such a fundamental knowledge of the gaming industry, of your game in particular, about what is cool about, like, what is great about your game. You know, like, I think about, you know, a lot about ugly games. Like, Wastenauts had great key art and illustrations, but we didn't have visual effects really at all to speak of. We didn't have good animations. We had good illustrations. And those were fine for screenshots and stuff like that. But ugly games actually like don't belong, for example, on social media, because they're not artist driven. I'm comparing that to a game that's, you know, beautiful, like a Grease, or like a what's the one that Raw Fury is doing right now, Sable, you know, where it's like that thing was GIF first, right? That game had a GIF and then they built a gameplay around it. Yeah. Not, we have a cool gameplay and we're going to figure out the art style. That's a very real large chunk of the gaming industry. And those are the games that are going to do phenomenally well on social media. But where are the gamers that want something crunchy living? They're probably not getting that information from social media like that. Maybe they're on forums, maybe they're like using other media or stuff like that. So for, like, what I didn't do with Wastenauts and what I needed to have done is been like, where are my players? There, as opposed to saying, I'm just going to post on Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, blah, blah, blah. Where are my players? And then how do I actually convey to them the cool things about this game? Like, forget trying to like pass off a screenshot. Forget trying to do that. Like, how do I actually tell them, here's the really cool thing about this game? And good marketers do that day in, day out. And I don't think a lot of indie devs really think about that.
I don't think indie devs are very good at marketing, period.
Yeah.
It's our kind of biggest shortcoming. And that's where I actually think publishers can, or I'd like to see where publishers can help out the most, because that is where we suck the most.
Yeah, I think, you know, a good publisher can, you know, take a look at a game, say, understand, here is the really cool part about this game. Here is what's going to sell. I know that, for example, our team sometimes does like cross media like understanding. So like, what are other things in other forms of media that are similar styles or resonate with the same demographic? Sometimes they'll reach out and do, you know, work with other indie developers. And I think, I'm going to confirm that we actually did this, that we announced this game that we're publishing before I say when we did this game. But okay, cool. When we announced that we were going to be publishing a game called Absolute Tactics, like, they started to do like started a hashtag for Tactics Tuesday. And so they were like, okay, we're going to actually feature a lot of other tactics games. And now we're trying to grab all of the people on Twitter who are actually interested in tactics, which is kind of a niche.
Yeah, so
to look at this, right? Tactics don't resonate with a lot of gamers. Like it's like chess, right? It's very slow.
Well,
it's very like
it's like Final Fantasy Tactics or other tactics
or
games
like
that.
or Banner Saga or
get the fan base of those games.
Yeah, exactly. And then inviting like, and tagging other, like they did the research for like, here are all the other indie tactics games that are in development, not being published by Akupara, but now we can combine them all into one Twitter. And so now when somebody sees that, they're like, oh, I love tactics games. I'm going to go through wish list all these. So.
And hope they convert when they release.
Right. It's about finding your audience. And that's a nearly impossible task.
I feel like for Karendow, much easier than Burgle's Bounty because JRPGs have a set audience out there. I feel like what do I want to say here? It's like you just have to find them. Like you just have to get the game out there, and it has to be a decent quality. Like it can't be nothing against RPG Maker, but it can't be an RPG Maker asset recycle, whatever.
It can't be an asset recycle. Yeah, I mean, listen, I am far from a successful person who's using RPG Maker, as opposed to say the one who's making She Dreams Elsewhere. Like that thing is blowing up. And that's
really? I saw the
MegFest
back in 2020.
Before COVID. That's getting a lot of attention. It's also been in Mega Booth. It's also like
it's like the low color, low resolution kind of.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed that game.
Yeah, that was good.
It's so good. It's so good. And he's so amazing. And when I judged it for the MagFest showcase all those years ago, I instantly recognized. I was like, wait a second. This is actually RPG Maker, and I think I'm the only one who knows this.
No, I can tell when it's playing.
And
I can usually tell when a game is RPG Maker.
Yeah, I mean, there's some specific limitations to it. So, but yeah, it's not about the tools. It's specifically about like the quality that you're putting out. So.
I think Karendow is going to be good quality, right, Gary? Right?
Oh yeah, it's going to be absolutely amazing, especially with the tunes.
Oh yeah, the music's kicking ass right now. I'll give credit where credit is due. All right, we're gonna talk a little bit more about Wastenauts.
All right.
So
my failure.
Well, is this Wastenauts or Waste Nuts? It's gonna be a complete different game. I don't know how you answer this. Hi, Gary.
It's truly whatever you want it to be.
So let's start with your pitch for it, because
okay. The pitch for Wastenauts, which at the time was from Rust, and even before that was Scrapyard, it went through a lot of name changes, was a co-op collectible card game. So we wanted to do Hearthstone that you play with your friends instead of against them. That was the pitch. It evolved a lot over time. Once Slay the Spire blew up, our pitch then became multiplayer Slay the Spire, because it was like, oh, this is kind of close to it. We never really figured it out for the exact wording. There was no clear RPG where everyone dies like it was for Vidar.
You said something along the lines of multiplayer online dungeon crawler card.
It was so many things. It was multiplayer, it was online. We called it a card crawler for a while, because we were trying to figure out what is the genre of games like Slay the Spire or Monster Train or stuff like that is not about it being a roguelike. And oftentimes those are roguelike and deck builders, right? Those are the genres that are used to describe those games. And we were neither. But we still wanted to convey the sense that you are going through a dungeon and using cards to do your stuff. And we had no genre title for that. This is actually an interesting thing that I think it was Riot was the first thing that we have to do is figure out what is the genre for that chess, that auto chess thing. So they had to come up with the term auto battler, because they're we have to tell other people that we are of the same kind. If you're trying to figure out the genre, you may have already lost.
Yeah. Okay. So I would have actually have loved to have seen Wastenauts or Wastenauts.
Wastenauts, yeah.
As I think I told you this because I love the world you guys created, like the steampunk kind of like the robots have taken over the ground and all the humans live in air cities now. That would have been a fucking awesome action RPG.
Yeah, I mean by the point, it's interesting because literally the first time that we had conceived of it was my partner Dan's. He was doing like as a setting for a tabletop RPG, like a homebrew tabletop RPG kind of thing. I think we had conceived of it first as a physical card game. It got very crunchy, and we were Dan works at Obsidian. Are inevitably like the UI person that we brought on, Anna, worked at Sony. Like our experience was all video games, and so the idea that I was going to be making a physical card game and having to research like manufacturing and shipping and like the size of boxes, I was like, I don't know anything about this crap. Like I don't.
But do you think that maybe it would, like, because that's a different market right there? Do you think you might have seen different success or different interest?
It's possible, because at the time that we were looking at it, tabletop on Kickstarter was like you could put anything on tabletop at Kickstarter and it would fund. That has since ended, but that wasn't the case like 3 or 4 years ago. So it's possible, but we didn't know anything about it. We really had no idea where to start with that kind of work to do a physical card game, and so it became an online game. I have no programming background, but I was the programmer for the whole thing, and I was trying to do like network multiplayer, which took forever. And and then it just kind of it got stuck, I think, a little bit. And also, we didn't give enough credit to this fact that it was boring. The game was boring, and
well, you had a lot of people engage in the alphas. Did they think it was boring? Because it
no, but that's but that's I mean, and I think like you and I've talked about this in the past before, but that was like very much confirmation bias, right? Is that we had like, oh cool, we've got 10, 20, 50 people or whatever playing this game like in the alphas, but what about everyone else? Like where and like our mailing list is 10 times this, 100 times this, or whatever it is. Why aren't they here? Why aren't they playing this game? I
think you probably maybe 1% of your mailing list anyway.
It's like, yeah, and I think ultimately it was boring. And ultimately, you talked a little bit about like, do we get a publisher for Kids of Karendow? I think regardless of whether you want one, you should apply for one. You should pitch as many publishers as you can. Because the only people who were telling us the truth the entire time and giving us consistent feedback were the publishers that we were pitching.
They were telling you it was boring?
Yes, every single one of them were telling us this game loop like is fine for about like a half hour, and that's about it. And we weren't listening. And ultimately, like that's the way to pierce like the bullshit. Like you can give a build to people who found. There's always gonna be somebody at PAX who likes your game. There's always gonna be somebody, and you're gonna be like, oh my god, they like the game. They see it. They understand me. And it's like, okay, but there's like 30,000 people here. What about the other ones? Like,
that was my experience with Burgle's Bounty.
Yeah, and there's always going to be like friends who of course are like, oh my god, I'm so glad that you're making a game and like following your passion.
It's like, oh, it's so cute.
So cute. But where the rubber hits the road is when you go to somebody and ask, like, I want $120,000 to make this game, and they tell you no, and here's why. Like,
Shark Tank.
Good feedback. It's critical. It's constructive.
Yeah. In my when I'm giving feedback like for Akupara, I take a lot of time to in part because it's almost never a no, it's always a not yet.
It's like fix this, and this, and send it back to us,
and then send it back to us, and we'll take a look at it. But so as a result, I try to really like give a lot of I lean into it a lot. And I'm gonna send you Kids of Karendow, and I'll give you like the full like Akupara treatment, right? I think that that feedback we were not taking it seriously enough. We would read it and we would say, oh, we kind of just need to tweak these like one or two things, when the fundamental like dynamics of the game were not there.
So you took it to Kickstarter. What was your, because I wanted to bring up the survivorship bias because the Gumbos bring that up a lot.
Okay.
So what was your point of no return? What was like, okay, at this point, if this doesn't work out, I'm done. I'm walking away from this project I've been working on for 3 years, because that is not easy.
It's not.
Like it's a bad artistic decision, but a good business decision.
Yeah. I mean, the better business decision would have been to walk away earlier, obviously. But I think we didn't have a path forward after the Kickstarter failed, right? So for that one, we were asking for 30,000, which was a lot more, but it was also the absolute possible minimum to get us to an early access state. And that was all it was going to do. It was going to include no new content. It was going to include like just basically like what we have, clean it up and get it to early access. And I thought, did everything that we could do to like, I came away from that. I didn't want to have the feeling after the Kickstarter when it failed of, what I really should have done was like do this, or, oh, I had this idea, but I never executed, or something like that. I really felt like we did everything we could possibly do. And sometimes games just don't fun, in part because maybe like they're not resonating or something like that. Or they're not getting enough eyeballs and you're just like not, being seen by enough people. It happens all the time. So, yep. That was I think we there were some last gasps after the Kickstarter.
I was sad that I was actually sad for you, because it's like, oh my God, he must be a wreck right now, because I would be a wreck if I were him.
Kickstarter is like a slow motion train wreck, because you have like 30 days. And by day 6, I knew that this wasn't going to fund.
Things picked up a little bit in the middle there because I was watching it. They
did. In part because either we funded it or I had friends who funded it who like.
Okay.
That's yeah. I mean, like there was an effort to like boost the the numbers and like start to get the thing going. But it really wasn't. What was the most concerning to me wasn't the trajectory there, like, oh, or like are the numbers on the right, like, path for averages or whatever, was the fact that we had 0 comments on the page. We had no, like, even though we passed like our goal on day 1, by end of day 1, I was like, oh, holy shit, like we've got, I wanted to get 20% in the first 3 days. We had 20% in day 1. And I was like, hot damn, this is great. We had 0 comments from all that. Nobody. And throughout the entire campaign, I think we got like 2. Despite doing updates, despite like trying to like bait those kinds of things. And I realized that our community was not engaged. Whoever was backing us was just kind of like backing and forgetting. And I realized pretty quickly we were like in the weeds. Yeah. That's the scary part, right? It's a, when you put out a new build, you can test your community by like seeing like how many people then show up in the Discord and start posting like memes or like start responding to it or something.
Our Discord is dead.
Like, well, I mean, like wherever you end up with your community, that's a
long way to go.
Yeah, that I think we messed up there.
So Gary, are you terrified yet? Think Karendow's gonna fail?
I don't know. I mean, could like, as you said, we do have a really quiet Discord, right? But, like another thing that kind of Dean said earlier was kind of related to like, I don't think people would really care unless we have like a full game that they can play. I honestly, I don't see people being engaged throughout the whole time playing the builds. I think they would much rather wait till a finished Karendow was available and then play it.
How many RPGs are you both following these days? Like active
I
community
am
members?
following Chained Echoes. There's another one that's been in development. I don't know if it's still in development. It's called Sully, Very Serious RPG. I think that one project may be abandoned at this point. There is what's that called again? Sea of Stars.
Are you like an active community member? You're like posting in the Discord like once a week.
I don't post any. No, not at all. I'm gonna buy these games when they're available, but I'm not. I don't participate.
What about you, Gary? Like, how many Discords for RPGs are you posting in?
I am not participating in any of them. Like for me, I'm waiting for Dragon Age 4 to come out. Like personally, but like I'm not like looking at stuff like every day and just like waiting for updates. Right? I would just much rather when it comes out, I'm gonna go get it.
And y'all have a way more vested interest than normal players because you're working on one. So like you are already way more predisposed to be those people than a regular player or somebody who's going to be part of your community. Right. And so, you know, it's a tough problem to solve in terms of like how do you find those people when they're not going to be interested until it's like closer to launch. Yeah. But then by that point, it's like too late. It feels like it's too late. So.
Well, it has to be. When we're really close, somewhat close to launch, maybe that's when we start really pushing it somehow.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to part 2 of our conversation with Dean. If you enjoyed this episode, please click the thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Next up is the battle theme from Kids of Karendow.